So I would like to give you the biographical information, and then we'll do a coin flip. So first, on my left is Kevin Gaither, who grew up in the 15th District in Sullivan and currently lives in Charleston. Growing up in Sullivan gave him the opportunity to teach piano, play pipe organ for 2 churches, weed soybeans, and worked lawn care jobs. He also worked for the county paper and for the school newspaper. Mr. Gaither graduated from Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology with a bachelor's degree in chemistry. While at Rose-Hulman, in an effort to help those who could not stand up for themselves, he started a group called Unity. He has served with AmeriCorps, bringing health and prevention education to inner city neighborhoods and schools. He was elected as vice chair of the Comprehensive Health Services Planning and Advisory Council. Currently, Mr. Gaither is precinct committeeman and web administrator for the Coles County Democratic Party. He has had his own tutoring business for the last 5 years, has been active in multiple political campaigns and veterans issues, has organized and moderated small business forums, and continues to participate in several area organizations, including Community Theater, Fox Ridge Foundation, and the 5 Mile House, among others. Mr. Spoerer, Carl Spoerer, lives in the country near Mahomet with his wife and 3 children, and considers himself a social moderate and a financial conservative. He studied business at Southern Illinois University and ultimately graduated from the University of Illinois with a bachelor's degree in finance with an emphasis in economics. In the early 90s, Mr. Spoerer worked with the ACTION Action Program to help provide mentorship to young men without fathers in their homes. In addition to being an amateur marksman and someone who still takes part in mixed martial arts, he is a former rugby player who has participated and coached multiple sports, including fast-pitch softball, girls basketball, boys baseball and football, and boys soccer. He notes that this has enabled him to work with students from a wide variety of different backgrounds throughout the district. Mr. Spoerer started coaching at the University of Illinois in 2005 and currently coaches the women's rugby team. Mr. Spoerer has worked in the field of home construction and landscaping, as well as working for Metropolitan Life and insurance sales. Currently, he is the CEO of Rural Country Marketing Incorporated, a telecommunications company he founded in 1997. So we're going to do a very brief coin toss. I will have Mr. Gaither call heads or tails.
Let Carl call.
Let Carl call heads or tails.
This, tails never fails until I say that.
Okay, so you're taking tails?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I don't even, oh, well, that works too. I suppose I should get somebody to check, but there it is, it's heads.
There you go.
So, Mr. Gaither will start with his opening statement, and you're welcome to come up here.
Great. Thank you all so much for coming. I just wanted to start out talking about our troops overseas. Mitch McConnell stood in the way of them getting paid during the shutdown, and that's, we all support our troops, we all support our vets. And that's one of the things I've seen when I've been crisscrossing the district is veterans are not being, we're not doing our job as citizens and as Congress. John Shimkus used to be somebody that they could count on, and that's just not happening anymore. And one of the things I found throughout all of my times on the trail is the sheer economic devastation. That is especially true the farther south you go. If you haven't traveled into some of these towns and communities, I really urge you to do so because it's like a sucker punch. And it's something that I think we all need to see firsthand. And that's why I go and talk to people first, one-on-one, because that's what's important, is making those connections. And that's what they deserve, is somebody to actually know what's going on in their community, know what's happening to their families. Because there's no opportunities for children when they graduate high school. There's no opportunities when they graduate college. And we need to do better. One thing that I have been very serious about is running my campaign like a business. And that's, we may not be generating a whole bunch of contributions. I think neither of us really have that going on. But I haven't loaned my campaign almost $13,000 either. That contributors later down the road would be paying me back. That's what separates me from Carl. One thing also I am very serious about is my life. I could have done so many different things. I could have done something with chemistry. I could have done a whole bunch of different things to make a whole bunch of money for myself. But what I chose to do was to fight for people. I fought to, give education to children in inner city schools. I fought to protect health care for people that couldn't fight and stand up for themselves. And that's something I believe wholeheartedly is what we want in our representative. Somebody that's actually done this throughout their life. And I really believe the citizens of this district are very open to a Democrat that actually has stood up for them, that can actually talk their language. Because I grew up in this district. I've been in the fields. I've been in the schools. And I believe wholeheartedly that the people are ready for change. And I look forward to all of your questions. I can't wait for this. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Carl Spoerer. Last time I was here, I had a grueling debate and I narrowly beat Cardboard Shimkus. And so, Ellen, wherever you are, when I walked in today and I saw I wasn't debating Cardboard Kevin, it put me under a great deal of stress, I gotta tell you. I'm so glad that Kevin had the moxie to get his signatures, and now that we have two voices in this district and two sets of ears in this district that are willing to listen to you, unlike our current congressman. If you're a woman, stand up. Right? If you are a man, if you are a man that supports these women in the resistance they've been putting up since a year ago today, stand up. All right? Right? You are the reason that we're here. All right? So with me, come on, let's get involved with this. Hip hip! Hip hip! Oh please, I'm a rugby player. Come on, I gotta have a better than that. I want to thank Alan and all of the people who have organized this event, as well as I'd like to thank Gail for moderating this event. And most of all, each and every one of you for taking time out of your day to come make an informed decision of who is going to be able to best support the Democratic Party. We're here today to talk about the country that we love, its economy, its environment, health care, respect for the elderly, and how we're going to take care of our children. We're here to talk about violence, not just gun violence, but tweets and bigoted rhetoric that lead to violence against women, immigrants, people of color, and people in the LGBTQ+ community. We're here today to talk about the Democratic Party in central and southern Illinois and how we need revival, how we need to restore that old-time political passion that once elected Paul Simon and Glenn Pichard from the 15th. We're here to talk about what it means to be a heartland Democrat, not a caricature Democrat that gets slapped down election after election. We're here to talk about John Shimkus and why he needs to be beaten, and Donald Trump and why Democrats must win back the United States House of Representatives in order to hold Donald Trump in check until such time we can send him back to Mar-a-Lago permanently. We're here today so that you can ask Kevin and I questions. Ask us about how we differ in our approach in winning conservative value voters in deep southern Illinois. Ask us how we plan to reconceptualize, rebuild, and revitalize the Democratic Party in the 15th District. Ask us about our understanding of the powers of a congressman, both the soft powers and the hard powers, and how we plan to use them to help the people in this district.
Time.
How much do I have?
2 minutes for that, and 2 minutes for each question.
All right. You want to go?
So, the predetermined questions were developed through the Coles Progressives and the Coles County Huddle Group. So these have been thought about by many individuals. The first question, and Kevin will be the first responder, is, as a mainly rural and small town district, how would you address the economic concerns of your constituents?
Great, thank you. All right, I like to talk from the heart and from my mind too, from my experiences. What the economic concerns that face this district are, some think they're insurmountable. I disagree. One of the biggest growth economies that we could actually grow throughout the district is renewable energies. It's pretty simple. We have all this coal, they're digging it out of the ground, and let me tell you, we're back to almost 1970 levels for coal production in Illinois. There are 0 union coal jobs left in the state. And let me tell you, what they do is they lay off coal workers that have been there for 3 decades, and then they rehire them back at lower price, lower wages, lower benefits. And so we need to provide them new jobs. Renewables is just one of those. Another one is our farmers. So we have all this wonderful farmland. Up here it's much more fertile. Down south, the land is not that fertile. So we have an amazing opportunity. So because NAFTA has decreased our corn and soybean prices. We also have seen decreased yields in corn and soybeans because of droughts and floods and this mix of all of these weather phenomena. So I suggest doing hemp. The industrialization of hemp would be huge. So farmers could actually make $3,000 an acre. It's huge. 25,000 products are made from hemp, and we could be making them right here in this district. 3 crops a year are made. You could get 3 crops for every season. It's a huge opportunity. We could be putting people back to work in this district, exporting this to other states, exporting this around the world. It's at least $60 to $90 billion a year industry, and that would revolutionize this part of the state. We could become an economic center. Not just Chicago, it would be down here. It would change the map forever. Also, I would say art communities. Now, this sounds like for some people, not such a great idea, but art communities are huge.
Time.
All right. We'll talk about that later.
How much fun, right? You don't know. Like, we have so much to say, we can't say it, and I'm already wasting my time. There is not a question today, I will bet, that you can ask me, there may be one or two, that I cannot trace back to the following. The United States is the richest country on the planet, by far. The resources and the money are being hoarded and pigeonholed at the top. It is the rich that are creating all of these problems because they are taking all the assets, and we are getting the crumbs, and now they're kicking us away from the table trying to get to those crumbs. Our mission, Democrats, in 2018, right, is we need to stop the 1% that is hell-bent on destroying the 99%. It all traces back to that. Our communities are dying. We're losing 1 to 1.5% of the population in all these communities year after year. There are a number of things we're going to do, so I'm going to get to those. One, I want to make job leadership teams. That means we're going to coordinate within these communities, find out what the assets are and the resources and the personnel that are available. We're going to put together a plan. We're going to try and use the soft power of a congressman to make that happen. We're going to definitely be using or implementing renewables. I'm a member or a supporter of the OFF Act, which is an organization that is trying to get us off all fossil fuels by the year 2035. Now, that's an aggressive target, I know. But I'd rather aim high and fall short. I'm good with that. If we aim low and hit our target, I always have a problem with that. You ask the young ladies I coach, okay? We need to have along the lines here, we need to have equal pay for equal women, or for women. Equal pay for equal work. Hello. So you get me in a hurry, Gail. We need to have a congressman that brings construction projects and infrastructure back to the 15th district. We're going to fight for 15 in the 15th and across the country so that we can have a living wage, and we are going to work really hard, and I'm really proud that we got the AFL-CIO endorsement last week.
Time. The good news, at the end, they can say whatever they want to say, and also you can be asking specific questions that might bring out some more of their answers. And if either of you need to have me repeat the question, please just ask me. So the next question, Carl will start, and it is, the majority of Americans want quality health care to be accessible and affordable for all. What do you see as the best way to move towards that? I know that's a difficult question in 2 minutes.
Yeah, thanks. All right. So I'm a rugby player, right? And I know people around the world, and we get broken, right? We play a rough game, we get broken. I know people in just most of the European countries, Australia, a lot of Asian countries. They have single payer, right? They have government-run insurance. It works. The cost of delivering services is less than half of what we pay per person in the United States. We're being ripped off by the pharmaceutical companies and the insurance companies. We need to be aggressively moving and demanding single pay. I do not think we should be delaying. It doesn't matter if we don't have a Republican president that should sign it or will sign it. We need to be going after it and be ready that when we change to a Democratic president in 2020, we will have something ready to go on day one that they can sign, and we can move on and get on with our lives and have a fair and just health care system for everybody in this country. All right? There are some things we can do to stabilize. We need to reestablish the risk corridors, which allowed insurance companies to price insurance policies and stay in business if they made a mistake. It was kind of an insurance for insurance companies. Marco Rubio took that away from us right away. We need to be allowing our Medicare to negotiate for drug prices with the pharmaceutical companies. Our congressman got 242 signatures to stop that and $300,000 in a party last January or January before last for doing that. He was the primary cog of stopping that negotiation. That's one of many reasons we need to get rid of him. We need to protect people with pre-existing conditions. We need to have all the provisions that the ACA had put into place were good, and they made it fair, and they kept the insurance companies in check. So in the meantime, while we're going after single pay, we need to make sure that those provisions stay in place.
Right. I agree with a lot of what Carl just said there. I mean, some of these are just so common sense, and most people from both parties agree. What really matters for rural America is the access to quality health care, and we don't have a lot of specialties in many of our communities and many of our hospitals. One of the worst would be mental health treatment. You know, if you go down to Fairfield in Wayne County, they, the wait time just to get in to see a therapist is about 45 days. To see a psychiatrist, well, they don't have one. And that's the case in so many of our communities, and that's a serious issue. You can say, get universal health care, but if we don't we don't actually target the access to treatment, then we're not going anywhere. If you try to get into a neurologist, it can take months, 3-4 months sometimes, and a lot of our community hospitals don't even have one. Senator Bush didn't have a neurologist until last year. I think that is, maybe it's 2 years now, that is 2018. These are the problems that we have to address with targeted programs. We have to do grants and scholarships to actually increase the size of the pipeline for people going into these specialties. And that's the only way we're going to get more people into the office. The clinical counseling program here at Eastern can only graduate 30 people every year. Otherwise, they'd lose their accreditation. We have to increase the size of those programs. That's good for the university, it's good for the community, and it's good for increasing decreasing the brain drain, I should say. Those are the kinds of policies that we have to be thinking. It's wonderful to have a talking point, but it's another thing to actually know the actual issues and how people are suffering because of it. That's why I talk to people every single day. Going back to what I said about art communities, these are huge opportunities that people have seen work in rural communities. Connecting farm to town and art is something that people can see tangibly in their, on the town square, throughout their community, saying, oh, look, something new and exciting is happening. We open up these empty storefronts to an artist or an art show for a week, and people come in and see the building, investors, and they go like, man, maybe I want to put a store here. And that can actually change the direction of an entire community. Thank you so much.
I'm just looking at the last part of this question that says,
Wait, you haven't seen it.
oh, I'm sorry. I was reading ahead, I'm sorry.
We do have timeout room if we need.
Well, you're getting me all hurried up with your clock and your time thing.
It's all my fault.
I know, I'm right.
I am going to make an executive decision and allow 3 minutes for this question because it really is 2 parts. So the first part is, what do you consider to be our most important environmental concerns? The second part is, how will you address them as our congressman without destroying jobs in the process? And the first person to speak is Kevin.
Great, awesome. Oh, okay, I got it. I'm not supposed to punch this thing. I do get very passionate about these issues. All right, first, the most important assets that we have throughout the 15th district is our water table and our land. These things fuel our entire economy. We have to protect them. They're the economic engines, they're our tourist destinations, and the part of our way of life. Some of us have been in the fields. So what also is the case is our small energy companies. These things are being squashed through the fee and regulation scheme that is out there. And we have to protect those people. We have to get some of these fees and regulations in line with reality. You'd be surprised when you read the entire book on the regulations that the less wells you have, the more you pay. That's the exact opposite way the fees should be. The more wells you have, the more you should pay. And so that way we can, because these people actually care. I talked to these people throughout the district. In Carmine, just last week, I talked to some gas and oil guys, and they agree. It's like they want us to get out of the way because they care about the farmland. They care about their water because that's where they live and work. That's one thing. So we got 3 minutes on this. That's great. So the reality about coal is pretty disturbing. It's not going anywhere because, like I said earlier, coal production's up almost to 1970 levels, and coal jobs are plummeting. Injuries are up because regulations for the industry are going down. We have to move those jobs into a different direction, renewables and things like that. I also am very concerned as a state. We are now subsidizing the nuclear power industry. Exelon's getting about $250 billion from us as taxpayers every single year to maintain these aging nuclear power plants. And we also just shuttered the Honeywell uranium plant down in Metropolis last year. So we have to do something to kind of put all this stuff back together. Instead of subsidizing aging plants, we should be building the new age of nuclear energy. I would say not so much in the Southern District, but more up here in places where it's safer to do so. These new micro nuclear power plants are very good at producing clean energy without the waste, and that they would last for a generation. We could be producing clean energy without coal or natural gas. We should be investing in those. And I'm not sure how much time we have, but this is a huge issue. We have to protect our water table. That's why I work with people like the Kaskaskia Water Conservation, the Bahamut Aquifer as well. These things are vital. That's 11% of our water, and that's about a third of the waterways between the two of those. We have to connect those dots and get them working into working together with our communities. Thank you.
All right, so once again, in reverse order, the last part of this question says, what would a congressman do to prevent destroying jobs in the process? To me, that's ludicrous. Okay, there are so many more jobs in renewables than there are in the fossil fuel industry. We have pipelines running into the southern part of the state, and there's only a handful of jobs. So that's just, to me, kind of propaganda to get in the way of what we need to be doing. The number one issue, it's climate change, right? Climate change is a global threat. 638 million people live in coastal areas which will be impacted by rising sea levels. The humanitarian disaster that will come about because of those people migrating inland, and there's no wall on the southern border that's going to stop the things that are going to happen. There's nothing in Asia. It's just going to be a catastrophic humanitarian disaster, right? So climate change is by far the number one threat to human beings at this point. Drought. What if we get a severe drought? We're an agricultural state. Right? What if it stops raining here? What if it stops raining in Nebraska and Ohio and Indiana? You know, we supply South America. That's where all the food comes from, right? We need to take this stuff seriously. And I know most people in this room do. But we need to be able to message to the other side in a way which they start taking it a lot more seriously, and they stop looking at corporate profits as the only factor in deciding how we move forward with this. We absolutely, along those lines, need to be protecting, thank you, Stephen. I'm sorry, if you're not hearing me, let me know. We need to be protecting our air and water. You know, we're humans and we operate at a higher level, but in the end, we're still biological creatures. We need air and water, and we're removing regulations. We're allowing the coal companies to let runoff, raw waste, run into streams that feed communities. To me, we talk about the definition of insanity. That's insanity on steroids to be allowing that. So yes, again, I'm very pro renewable energy. I believe in carbon tax credits. I believe in smoke scrubbers on stacks. I believe in that we need to be fighting. A congressman should be using his powers to get renewable energy companies to move here, to put solar panels on houses, and to create jobs. I think that's pretty much what I have to say about it. I don't need 3 minutes now.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you're aware that we have a budget crisis right now. And of course, it's a very serious crisis. And being from Illinois, we kind of get hit twice then with the budget crises. The next question, our fourth question, and after this we can pick up cards if you have questions that you'd like to have me ask the candidates or be thinking about what you want to do. We've already got some that have been collected. We'll do this specifically after this question. Given the breadth of federal investment from Medicaid to national defense, what are your priorities for where we should expand, maintain, or cut back? And we start with Mr. Spoerer.
There are 195 countries on this planet. The United States have active military in 150 of them. We are at endless war. Why? Do we need to be in all those places? I don't think we do. Do we need to be at an endless war? No. When I watch, I was a student of the Vietnam War. When I watch a lot of the parallels of the things that we're doing in Afghanistan, I think it's time to get out. General Eisenhower, when he left office, and President Eisenhower, of course, said, the pursuit of absolute security is a vanity that will bankrupt a nation. And that's where we're at. We're bankrupting ourselves with our military. That said, and I meant to make it really clear, I have nothing but the highest level of respect for the men and women that serve in the military. My issue is with the military-industrial complex that seems to be running the show. What are we defending? Just what are we defending when 1 out of 5 kids or people in this country go to bed not knowing where the next meal is coming from? When we have people that are dying because they can't have health care. So my priority would be to cut back on military, would be to have a progressive tax and raise revenues. Did you know in 1950, if you made more than $400,000, you paid 92% on $400,001, right? Do you know that we paid before Ronald Reagan, the highest tax bracket was 72% over a certain amount of money, and it was Reagan? That's where, okay, so we need to get back to that. If you make $1 million, God bless you. If you make $1.1 million, we're going to tax you at 50%, right? Let's get some tax cuts to the working class, get the economy started, get goods and services being produced, all right, and let's get the economy going that way. But we need to get our priorities straight, and we also need to get the corporations underhand, right? If you made $10 million as a corporation, 60% of you didn't pay a dime in taxes, right, last year. So we need to get our priorities in order. The tax code, as a finance major, I can tell you the tax code controls your lives way more than you know, and what the Republicans just did with this tax code is going to make our lives even more difficult. We need to get...
Yeah, the tax plan, which is a real scam, it gives us an opportunity, really. We can like draw back the corporate tax break and really use that to fund a lot of the things that we really want to do. Things I would like to do would be expand programs like Social Security. You know, a lot of seniors I talk to, they're barely making it. Sometimes they have to choose between, food and medicine, and that's a choice they should be having to make. We could increase, the income cap and really fund a lot of that. And all that money goes directly into our local economies. That just makes sense. Same thing with food stamps. It's usually the whipping post of Republicans. It's like, these people, why are we feeding them? Well, it's because they need food. These things are just so tough. But every dollar we spend in food stamps creates $1.76 in, economic output. It pays for itself, and it creates jobs. Another thing, with national defense, often both parties are in the bag because, even Bernie Sanders voted for, airplane project because parts of it are made in Vermont. This is a difficult issue to break. And there is a lot that we can cut from there. So we have to do it. But for a lot of these representatives and senators, it's a difficult choice because they're going to be cutting jobs. But we could always repurpose those jobs for something else. Also, probably the biggest thing that we could do is grow the economy, not the way that the Republicans do, which is trickle down into the campaign funds. What we should be doing is a massive multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure bill. This would put people back to work across the country. I don't know anybody else that has to drive around, but those roads are killing us. It is terrible. The bridges are awful. I mean, sometimes we go to Edwardsville, William and I, and there's massive holes right on the bridge. This is disturbing. And it's long overdue that we put investments in our communities, in our roads, and each other. These investments create lots of jobs. They actually create lots of jobs as well as that. So thank you so much. Can't wait.
So if you have questions, if you have written out a question, would you please raise your hand and it'll get picked up by either Jenny or Karen. I know
if you'd like one of these to write down a question.
You can do that too.
I'm sure you get one.
And we should, and you have pencils with that also.
Yeah, you just go up to
We still have one more question, right?
Yes.
Okay. Seriously.
Okay. All right. Our final predetermined question is, do you have any policy ideas that can balance Second Amendment rights with current public safety concerns involving mass shootings, and the availability of assault-style weapons.
This is very serious. And just a little bit about my history. A number of my friends in Indianapolis, when I lived there, were shot. Some of them in the head, and they're no longer with us. I mean, this is a very serious thing. The thing is, we're not going to get rid of mass shootings in America. It's just not going to happen. You could try to get rid of, and ever since 2004, when the assault weapons ban expired, no meaningful gun reforms have been able to pass Congress. So, to me, if you keep on doing the same thing and you expect a different result, there's a definition for that. I just don't buy doing that anymore. I do not like failure. So let's try doing it from a different point of view. Let's go at, creating accountability, increased accountability and enforcement mechanisms that our cops can use. And a lot of this is, if we got rid of some of the drug laws, we could actually focus on violence. Another friend in Sullivan, when I moved back to town, she was murdered. It shouldn't have happened. And I had to testify in her murder trial. We don't protect people from violence. If we increase so if you have a firearm, you buy a firearm, especially if you buy guns in bulk, if those guns are used in violence, you should have to be held accountable. Now, of course, if somebody steals your gun, maybe that's, there is a room there for maybe not. But if you don't tell the cops that your gun's missing, then, maybe there's a problem there. We had just had a shooting in Mattoon last year where, a kid walks in with a gun. I mean, this stuff, there's a reason why firearms are serious. It's because we're supposed to be accountable for our actions and for our inaction when something happens. We have to give cops the ability to, this is a very serious issue, okay? Thank you. I try to keep watch over here for you.
I have no idea. So, first of all, to be honest, I'm from the country. I grew up with a rifle in my hand out in the country. If something happens at my house, it's going to take 20 minutes for the sheriff to get there. So I am conceal and carry. That said, I believe in strong background checks. I believe that we need to get rid of all of the loopholes in the law, like the gun show loopholes. The way I would address assault rifles is, Kevin's right, we're not going to get rid of them. I don't think we need to be selling them. But for the ones that are out there, let's have everybody that owns one have to have $1 million insurance policy, right? That costs $500 a year. And let's see how bad they want that gun then. They don't need that gun. We need to get rid of bump fire stocks. We need to get rid of high-capacity magazines. We need to get that military-grade ammunition out of the hands of the general public. There is no sportsmanship use for any of that, including the AR. So I don't have a problem with hunting and with some protection, but I do have a problem with the general public having military-grade weapons in their possession. We're losing a lot of police officers for that very reason. I think that's it. Oh, I did have one more. Can I have my seconds? I'm sorry, I really messed that up. The biggest thing we need to do is we need to invest heavily in public school education. It's going to be a 12 to 15-year fix for us to educate children and give them the opportunities. That's the only way we're going to stop the violence in this country, is to invest in our children and change the mindset and the fortunes of these communities. Sorry, it's the most important thing.
All right, if you would like to ask a question of our candidates, please come over and line up in front of the mic or in front of the table. And then if you, once we have questions from the audience too, I'll just go question from audience, question from mic, and alternate. At the very end of this, after the candidates give their final closing statements, I'm going to have Paul Weick, who's our Coles County Democratic Chair, talk briefly about voting. And I also would like to have any candidates who are here from who are running for any office in the county or state to also just identify who they are and what their name is, so we might know if we have other candidates here. So, why don't we start with your question? Are you...
Okay. I'm Blair Bookland. I'm from Mattoon. My question. So, yeah, I have lots of kids. My question is for both candidates. With the current budget crisis, the shutdown of the government, would you have voted to keep the government open or voted to shut it down, and why?
Okay.
Yes, Carl.
Shutting the government down is a very serious course of action. I really believe that we need to solve the problem with DACA and Dreamers, absolutely. But it's not the hill that I would have died on. If I was going to die on a hill, it would have been over the tax scam plan. All right? So I want to make sure that we solve that and we treat these kids like Americans. But when we're talking about the harm that we're going to do to ourselves on an international, the image that we have international, what it's going to do to the bond markets where we borrow the money, what it's going to do to the working men and women of the military in the United States. It's not the hill I would have died on at this moment. I would have kept pressing the issue, but I certainly would have found a way, and if I had to agree to the 4-week funding that the Republicans put out there, I would have probably agreed to that, and then I would have said, okay, if we're not done in 4 weeks, that's when we're going to pull the carpet. So let's get serious. But I don't think I would have taken the course of action that they took on Friday night.
All right, this is a tough one. Of course, being in the House, majority rules, so we really, unless we take over, which I think we're going to next year, we wouldn't have any role to play. I would say this, this is the 4th continuing resolution, and here it is. The Republicans have put us once again in this crisis situation. And, why wouldn't we, do everything we can for this 800,000 children that were brought here, with no cause of their own? And a lot of these people are hardworking people. They pay taxes, and and we have to stand up for them. We were in Springfield yesterday at the Women's March, and heard this wonderful story by this young woman who is put her life on the line talking to us. She's a DACA student, and they deserve somebody to stand up for them. And that's the thing is Democrats. That's what we do, is we stand up for people. And of course, 3 continuing resolutions ago, no, I would never have done that. But it's a time and a place where you have to stand up for people, and that's what I've been doing my whole life. And sometimes you have to say enough is enough. And I am tired of the Republicans playing us against each other. It's not the Democrats that said no, we're not going to pay troops around the world. It's not the Democrats that said no, we're not going to fund CHIP last year. We are the ones that stand up for people, and that's what I'll always do, no matter what the cause is. Thank you.
Okay. While I'm waiting for the questions, why don't we go ahead and Liz, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, I'm Liz Ting. I actually live in Urbana right now, but it's nice to be back in Coles County where I grew up. I think one of the most important things right now is to defeat John Shimkus. But to win in this district, you'll have to woo some Trump supporters. And I'd like each candidate to address how you think you can speak to them and address their disaffection with the country and the direction it took them and bring them back to our side.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the question. This is very serious. I've been talking to Trump voters, throughout the last last 2 years, really. I've been talking to Republicans, independents, across the district. It's very important to be able to relate to them and to talk their language, not to disrespect them. I've had a number of people Democrats, just to say, that disrespect Southern Illinois voters, because they say it's a lost cause. They're not. These people have not had somebody stand up, for them for a long time. In fact, some of the, Vienna, I was there, a couple of weeks ago, And these people said that they had not seen a candidate since Jim Edgar, and this is, it's painful. It's painful. But that's the case in almost every single community I visit. They are shocked that any Democrat would even come, because they always say it's like, oh, you're just like, this is Republican County. But 80% of those people were Democrats, and I knocked on the door of the Elks the other day in McLeansboro. It's like, everything was closed down. It's like, man, it's like I knew people were going to be drinking. And so, right? And, I banged on the door. It's like, you got to let me in. I'm running for U.S. Congress. And, it's a lot of, older white men. And I said, like, man, we're going to have a chat, and we may disagree on things. But you know what they did say? It's like, you know what? You came in here. You talked our language. You respected us. We may disagree on things. But what they knew is, like, I was going to stand up for them. I was actually going to be here and continue to come no matter what. And that's what these people deserve. And that's what they haven't seen from either party. I mean, neither the Democratic Party or the Republican Party has stood up for these people in decades. And that's what I represent for them, is somebody that actually cares enough to just, come knock on their door and say, yeah, I will listen to what you have to say. We may disagree, but we agree on one thing. We deserve so much better. Thank you for the question.
It is a great question. Thank you. We're Heartland Democrats. Republicans are Heartland Republicans. So they're getting their news from the coast, and we're getting our news from the coast. But in reality, we're Heartland Americans. And we're not that far apart, right? Our lives, our daily lives, how we feel about our families, what our values are, we're really allowing ourselves to be pulled apart by news media that profit on us watching their programs and watching their advertising. But the reality is we're not that different. Now, there are some differences. So the first thing we have to do is we have to identify what the values are. We always talk about value voters. But does anybody know what the values that we need to be talking about are? Does anybody? Anybody, right? Here's what they are. Caring, fairness, loyalty, authority, and sanctity. And there are some differences on how we see these things, right? And so Democrats really only focus on caring and on fairness, and Republicans focus equally on 05. So when we're creating a message that is going to be heard by Republicans, we are going to shape that message appropriately. But let me give you a tighter understanding of a difference. Let's talk about fairness. Democrats see fairness on a macro level. We've got these kids that have come in, no fault of their own in the United States. They were little. They're Americans. We know it's fair to give them citizenship. Republicans also see fairness. They see the fairness that their uncle didn't get a job or their husband didn't get a job because someone who's in the country that illegally took that job, and that happens. Who's right? Well, both are right. And what we've got to do is do the hard work of negotiating and talking to each other, and how do we reconcile these things? Are we done?
Yeah.
Oh.
So the first question starts with the statement, different states fund schools K through 12 in different ways. Illinois relies heavily on property taxes. Do you think this is the best way to fund our public schools? And if not, how would you fund them? And I believe that is yours.
I don't think it's the best way to do it. I think that it creates an equity on who pays what and how it's paid. I think we just need to bite the bullet, and we need to get a constitutional amendment in the state of Illinois if we need to do that, whatever it takes. And we need to pay property taxes as a part of sales tax and a part of income tax, period, dot. There's some other things that we can do. I'm not only for the legalization of and growing of hemp. I don't see any reason why we should not just allow at least medical marijuana, if not recreational marijuana, in the state of Illinois. Drug lords in Mexico are getting that revenue. Why shouldn't the state of Illinois? Let's fund education. Let's look at what Colorado did. I know there were a lot of fears before Colorado did this, but Colorado has worked through the programs. They've got a great roadmap. They are now a surplus state, and their education system is being well funded. So let's look at taking that kind of approach, because what we have in Illinois is broken, not only broken for the taxpayers of Illinois, but it's broken for the school systems of Illinois. They are grossly underfunded, and we need social services in these schools. One thing that I heard in Danville the other day was that 40 to 60% of the time of teachers is spent providing social services to the kids, that the kids aren't getting parenting at home. We need to provide those services in a standalone environment for those kids so that the teachers can get back to teaching in the classroom. I mean, teachers are still wonderful, warm people, and they're still going to act, as parental role models for those kids. But we need to have professionals to help these families and help these kids especially. Thank you.
Yeah, the state, formula for getting us our education is totally broken. That's why the gubernatorial race is so important. And whoever is the winner, we have to get behind and support, because Ronner will kill our schools. He's already been, doing that for 3 years, and we are in dire straits. I mean, tutoring kids for 5 years, I know exactly how broken they are. And the teacher shortage is one of the worst. If we, that's one thing as a congressman we can do, is increase the pipeline for grants and things. The education program here at Eastern, used to be huge. There used to be, massive amounts of teachers coming out of there. And now they can barely fill one program each year. That's a huge red flag to me. They're, just in Solomon, for instance, they had almost all of their math and science teachers vacate a week before school started. So some of them had to be replaced with preschool teachers. And not to discredit preschool teachers, but if we don't get real teachers that know their subjects into those, especially in high school, we're in some trouble. And we don't get education right pre-K. If we don't get education right, in elementary school, it's all lost money after that. Investing in that early age is everything. And we should be really rethinking the entire education system. It is going to be a 15 to 20 year process to really reorganize everything. And as a congressman, we're limited in the Illinois structural problems that exist, but that's why we have to do better. And we have to elect people like Shirley Bell, to the state rep. All right, thank you.
This weekend, there have been many marches held across the country and in other countries, a continuation of last year when over 4 to 5 million people marched on the marches around the world. I would like you to tell us in your words, what do you think are the concerns of the marchers, and what would you do about it if you were elected?
Great. Wonderful question, Bonnie. We were both in Springfield, which was an amazing march. And let me tell you, what was extraordinary about it was how many issues were brought up during that march. I mean, it went from veterans to women's issues to LGBT, IA. I mean, there's a whole, I get confused sometimes myself. But these issues are serious. What we have to do is stand up and fight for people. And sometimes as Democrats, we haven't done a good job of standing up and talking to people and making them personal and making these issues emotional and making the connection. Now, I've seen this myself. I was in Albany the other day talking to this Flora couple, and they were very serious about being pro-life. And I talked to them in a different way. And I think having more conversations, especially in a district like this, with people that we disagree with, is how we're going to change the needle on a lot of these things. That's why, with gay marriage and marriage equality specifically, we changed the direction of the country because we had conversations. And we can't do it necessarily in the polarized atmosphere in Washington. What we do is in our main street, and our living rooms, and at the local bar and the restaurant. That we have to have more conversations. We can't disrespect each other. All right? What we can do is talk to people like we're human beings. We are fellow human beings, and we care about each other. We care about these issues. And I'm telling you, if you haven't met Susana Mendoza, she is one of the most amazing speakers. She's passionate. And she really cares about every single person. When she gave me a big hug yesterday, it was something else, because you just know that woman cares about every single person in the state. It doesn't matter what party they're from. And that's what we deserve for our representatives. Somebody who cares about everybody. Thank you.
I learned a long time ago not to speak for women. My wife trained me that. But if I was to guess, I would guess some of the battles would be against the objectification and degradation of females in general in our society. I would guess that it would be equal pay for equal work. I would guess that those women are standing up against racism, xenophobia, homophobia. Right? I would guess that it would be a combination of all of those things, and that's my belief based on the people that I've talked to. I think mostly that women are standing up for America. I think that's what they're doing. I think they're standing up to a bully president, and they're standing up because they've had enough, and they know that the attacks, I'm a white man, right? So the attacks aren't on me. It's easy for me, but women, regardless of skin color, they're under attack. They feel the pressure, and they're standing up, and thank God they're standing up. They have been leading this revolution and leading the wave since the day Donald Trump got elected. And I can tell you, on my campaign, or the people who support me, I would say probably 95% of the people that support our campaign are women. And that's because they're the ones taking the lead and saying no, saying enough. I think that's all I got. Yeah.
To a large degree, the next question from the audience is an extension of this previous question. So, in this time of heightened awareness about gender, the questioner can't help but notice that our 3 options for representation are all men. Please list 2 concrete things you would do to represent and advocate for women. And we're starting with
I can't help it, I'm a man. I'm just sorry. Look, I would invite them to the table, number one. I would have them in the office, in our administration. I have Sandy. Sandy is my campaign manager, right? Vivian's here to support me. Rena's here to support me. So, be inclusive. We have several other females on our team. Annette is on our team on our weekly conference call. So include them to the table. Ask their opinions. Ask them what the issues. Give them leadership roles, right? I've actually talked to a number of young females in this district and saying, I hope to be elected. I hope to be there for 5 or 6 years, and I hope you come and kick me out of office, because we need young females, not only just females, but young people to start taking charge. And I've been encouraging several. I think there's maybe 1 or 2, or at least 1 in this room that I might have said that to. Okay, so that's really what that's really where I'm coming from as far as the inclusion. I support the Me Too movement. Thank God. Thank God it's finally come on. Thank God we finally outed these creeps in positions of power taking advantage of other human beings. Thank God. Right? So I also support, just make this clear, I think that a woman has a right to make her own health care decisions. So, thank you.
All right, this is pretty simple. The Equal Rights Amendment, absolutely would support passage of that. Also, the Claire McCaskill and Gillibrand, Senator Gillibrand, both have tried to pass the sexual misconduct in the military, would totally be behind getting that passed and pushed through. Another thing, we should be listening to women. We should believe them, and we have to take into account how much they have suffered, because they have been on the outside looking in. Sometimes they get pressured and coerced. Sometimes they're assaulted. My own, it's a little emotional, but my own friend was a victim of domestic violence. You know, she was stabbed to death 27 times. Thankfully, I had a small part to play in the guy who did it going away for 75 years. And that kind of, the issue is to protect women and to protect them from predators. And the fact that somebody could just give information to police about something that doesn't matter, and in order to get back out on the street. You know, he was a repeated violent offender. I hear this story all the time throughout the district where somebody who is a violent criminal gets out on the street. He had even broken a restraining order, and so he served 4 days. He was given a 4-day sentence, served 2, and 2.5 months later, she was gone. And that's the kind of thing that we should not allow. We have to stand up and say enough is enough. You know, I just got to say, the time is up, and we have to do better as a society and as a country. It's over. All right. What's the next question?
Kathy Wright from Mattoon. Agreeing that we need single-pay universal health care in this country, how do you suggest that we fight the huge drug companies and the insurance companies who are the real reason we don't have it?
Yeah, it's very important. You know, I take a medication. I have to take it every day. It went up 4 times last year, so now it's $3,000 a month for 30 pills. And that's small compared to so many people that I know. We have to fight this with a groundswell and a tidal wave, because there is bipartisan support for getting rid of these high-priced prescription drugs. One thing that I know both of us are not doing is taking money from special interests, you know, and that's a huge change. John Shimkus gets tons of money from special interests. You know, one of the things that we could do is, actually reform our campaign finance system for once, but it has to pass constitutional muster. We have to break the stranglehold that if we pass universal health care, it's not actually going to make a difference if we don't, actually target the things that drive the prices higher. And in these rural areas, we're not. We're always going to be under threat. If you look at universal health care in places like Australia, in rural areas, they're still left behind. They have to, medevac people all the way to, the bigger cities because they have no access to health care. And I don't want to see that happen here. These prescription drugs are a huge problem. I mean, the fact that they just came out with an eye, I think it was an eye cancer thing, for $850,000 for one treatment. It's disgusting to me. And we have to stand up and say enough is enough. And that's, that's how you break it. We all have to come together. We all have to come out to vote. Regardless of which one of us comes out of this primary, we have to come together and say, we're all going to support that, just like with the governor's race. All right? Thank you.
I have a question for you. Who does the government belong to?
Us.
It belongs to us. So it's on us. It's on us, right? We have to have the will. We have to be willing to take on the people that are saying, oh, it's going to bankrupt or there's going to be long lines. We've got to fight that propaganda back. We've got to decide that we're going to go out and we are going to keep demanding it and demanding it and demanding it, and we are going to elect representatives that are going to go to Congress and demand it, and no matter what the pushback is from the pharmaceuticals. We need to get a little bit of passion. We need to stop taking no for an answer. We need to get other people. Everybody in this room, you have a friend, right? I bet you all have one friend. I have one friend, right? Okay. Everybody has a friend. How do your friend feel about it? Okay. Make sure they feel the same way you do. And then when you make sure they feel the same way you do, make sure you tell them that they need to go. They're now responsible to go talk to a friend. All right? This government, this medical system, this all belongs to us. And I know this Trump administration has gotten us to a point where we think, or he thinks definitely belongs to him, but it doesn't belong to him. We've got to change our mindset. We've got to be willing to go out there and say, we are going to have single payer. I don't care how much money you have. We want it. We're voting in the representatives that are going to give it to us.
I have a question from the audience. It says, in your opinion, how can two parties that often have such different values work together in a bipartisan way to benefit the community as a whole? I'll just repeat it again. In your opinion, how can two parties that often have such different values work together in a bipartisan way to benefit the community as a whole? And we're starting you.
Back to what I was saying earlier. Do we really have, are our values really that different? Are our everyday lives really that different? You know, on a rugby team, I always tell that we get new players, we get new teams. You know what I tell them when I see them playing? You know, they're not talking to each other. When you coach a female team and they're not talking to each other, you know they're in trouble, right? Because how many words do you think a woman uses in a day? 18 to 22,000, right? If they stop talking, they're in trouble. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to reach out. We need to talk. It doesn't matter how much I'm making phone calls. I get the phone hung up on me. I don't care. I pick up the phone and I dial it again. Okay. We need to start dialing the Republicans. All right. We need to start the conversation. We need to get engaged. We are not going to be taking no for an answer. All right. We need to understand their language. That's what I'm studying. I have a great person on the team now. Just joined 10 days ago. Our messaging is going to radically change because our message is going to go from this primary message talking to Democrats to a general election message, and our message is going to be pitch perfect when we speak it. And I'm going to have everybody in this room that is on the team, we're going to teach you how to have a pitch perfect message for our Republican friends.
This is a great question. You know, everybody thinks we disagree on almost everything. What I found in, you know, actually talking to people, when you talk to people face to face, they can't hang up the phone. You know, what they also don't like is talking to somebody in a suit, you know, because they usually have talking points. That's what John Shimkus usually has, and people really respect somebody that actually shows up and keeps showing up. You know, and that's one of the things I've been doing. You know, wherever I go, I see the same people, and they start. You know, that's why in Wayne County, which I got to say, Wayne County, had the highest percentage of support for Trump in the entire country. But I've got Republicans there that are going to pull a Democratic ballot to support my campaign, which is our campaign. You know, and because they see what we all see, that they've had enough of this divide and conquer kind of mentality. You know, it's the conversations that we have with each other that matter. You know, it's the connections that we make with each community and with each person, with each family. When you talk to business owners and they get on board and they say, okay, you know what, you actually care about our community. You actually care about workers here. You actually care about business here. You know, it's not about one side against the other. And that's what I think a lot of the problem has been, is that the Democratic Party in Illinois and across the country has not talked to rural voters in a long time. And, you know, and I've been doing this wherever I've been, you know, and I've been a lot of different places, New Hampshire, California, Indiana, talking to people of all sorts of different beliefs and ideas. And the thing that we've always got to is like, we may disagree, but it's like, you know what? They go like, oh, you know what? I actually have a faith and hope that something's going to change. Something's going to give. And we're going to get to a better place, a better style of politics, because guess what? There are rational people that give a damn, to put it bluntly. And that's what these people deserve. That's what these people need. They need somebody that talks their language. You know, somebody who's actually going to, give a blunt answer. All right? Let's hear the next question.
I believe, Karen, you're going to ask a question?
Does it work? Oh. I didn't think I'd make it to the microphone. I thought somebody would bring this question up before, but I had it in my pocket. So
This will be a big deal, whichever of you faces John Shimkus, because he is stridently anti-abortion.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the political football of abortion. Family planning and access to contraceptives are largely responsible for an abortion rate that is currently at an all-time low. To me, common sense says keep it up, okay? Do you believe abortion should be a private decision between a woman and her doctor? And will you support abortion rights?
Yeah, this is a question I've actually got many times on the road, especially from Republicans, and they're very heartfelt with their beliefs on this. And the way I approach it is pretty simple. You know, I talk to them about prenatal care and about women's choice and women's options for health care. You know, what they actually understand is when you talk to them about, because I have friends that, they've had something violent and traumatic happen to them, and that's a repeating, part of my life is the amount of violence that happens to people. Then they had to make a terrible choice, and I don't want to get in the middle of that choice. Why would we want the government to tell us what we have to do or what we can't do? And that's something that most people can understand. And what Republican policies have done is use it as a battering ram, in order to divide people from voting in their own best interest. The thing about what Republicans really have done is eliminated health clinics for women, which provides prenatal care. And that actually provides help for the baby, that provides health care for the mother, and that's actually what makes a difference. And actually I've got a number of these wonderful people that believe in pro-life to understand it's like we're not for abortion. We're for, helping women, families, and children get a whole, full life. And that's what they deserve. And when you talk to people, well, you don't just immediately jump down their throat. You listen to what they have to say, and they then listen to what you have to say. They go like, oh, you know what? We're not so different after all. So you can't win this race by just being for or against. You get this race by, bringing people into the tent. And that's what I've been doing all my life. Thank you.
I can't imagine that any woman wants to have an abortion. I just can't imagine it. Knowing the character of the women that I know and have been in my life, I imagine it's a very, very difficult decision. Again, my final stance on this is that I believe that women have the right to make their own health care decisions. But I want to tell you a little story. My son, he's now 16. When he was 11 months or 11 weeks, the doctors told us he was going to have some disabilities. And he has some minor disabilities, but they asked us if we wanted to terminate the pregnancy. And obviously, by what I've told you, our answer is that we chose life. And it was the right choice for us. But from that time when we made that choice to the time he was born, the level of stress that was in my life and my wife's life was unbelievable, because we had two beautiful children. And we wondered, were we going to be able to provide for them? Would my wife be able to keep her job if he had Downs? Would we be able to stay in our house? And ultimately it worked out. He has hearing and a few little things, but wonderful. I would never want to be in the middle of that decision for somebody else. The ACA and providing contraception has brought the rate down. I want to focus on bringing that rate down. I want to focus on helping women to not be in that situation. But I have no desire to tell them what to do. Anything that we can do to bring the abortion rate down helps everybody, but especially the poor woman who is having to make that decision.
I have several questions we're not going to get to. So I thought the last question I would ask of each candidate is a relatively open question, which is, what do you consider to be the most pressing problem in our district, and what do you hope to do about it?
I think things are tangled together, but ultimately, I guess it's got to be economic activity, which will lead then to a increase in our ability to fund our schools and fund our hospitals. We need to get money circulating around these communities, flowing into these communities. We need to get jobs into these communities so that our population stops dropping, so that when a kid gets through trade school or graduates from college, they can come home and live in the hometown where they're from, if that's the choice they want, and there's a job there that gives them a viable opportunity. So again, I'm really big on renewables. I think that that's going to be a big help. Small business loans to get a lot of these buildings that Kevin referred to filled back up. Right? Trying to target cities that have idle plants that can still be used in workforces, and then trying to target companies to bring them back. Changing the tax code to stop incentivizing companies to move their jobs overseas. The tax code is set up in a way which companies are rewarded for taking American jobs and sending them overseas. We've got to change that. Education, funding schools, getting these kids in all neighborhoods, regardless of the economic opportunity or lack thereof in a neighborhood, getting these kids in an opportunity where they can go and take care of themselves and they can have a productive life in the United States. That would be number two. Probably up time. Right?
Yeah, it's the economy, stupid. I mean, really, when you look at the unemployment chart for all the counties, the majority of the red, ones that are in the red, are in the 15th district. I mean, we live in the poorest district in the state. We have very tough problems in every single community. I mean, it is really, it is tough. I mean, when you go into, when I visited Brookport, for instance, there's one business in the whole town, and they only probably hire about 6 people. Nobody hardly has even a vehicle, so everybody's walking around. There's no opportunity. We have to give people opportunity. If we don't succeed in that, there are many of these towns that are just going to die. And we cannot stand for that. I mean, it is so disturbing. I mean, it is disturbing that this is the way that some of these children are growing up. We have to do better. That is, by far, is the largest problem that we have to fix. If we don't fix that, there is this district's going to get so large that it'll be 50 counties potentially. There are systemic and structural problems that we can fix. The education system is a large part of the problem. If we don't start increasing investments in making sure that the teacher-student ratio in elementary school and kindergarten, it becomes so much smaller, that it's really, we're not giving any of these people, these students, these kids, any kind of opportunity to make those connections in their brain and give them the legs to grow throughout the course of their life. And I just got to say, I am so impressed with the resiliency of the people. I'm so impressed with especially in the southern counties, how welcoming they are. When I've been in some of these parades, some of these kids, it's very cold out. They're wearing pajamas and stuff, and they are so thrilled to even get a pencil.
Time.
Thanks.
Let's finish closing. And okay. Now we've run out of time, essentially, so I'd like to have our closing statements, and it will start with Mr. Spoerer. 3.5 minutes, Mac.
Yes, ma'am. Friends, thank you for coming today and being a part of this conversation. I hope you found it of value to your time. People call me a lot of different names. Sometimes it's intentional, and sometimes it's accidental. Carl Spoerer will bring up all sorts of autocorrections on your smartphone. But there are 2 names that always get my attention. One is Dad, and one is Coach Carl. I think when my kids call me dad, everybody in the room can understand why that would get to my heart. But what I want to share with you today is why Coach Carl also stirs me. I was born in the mountain country of western Pennsylvania. I grew up in a beautiful place, but I did not have a beautiful childhood. See, my dad, he was an alcoholic, and he regularly beat the crap out of my mom and I. And he did all his fathering with his fist on my face. He damaged my nose so badly, I'd do that, my nose would bleed all the way up until I was 27 years old. He just didn't damage my nose. He damaged my spirit and my self-confidence. As a little kid, I thought the only way to handle hard times was to run off the field and hide and not let anyone hear me. I was a cursed kid, and then came along Coach Fikes. I didn't know at the time, but I was about to be blessed. Coach Fikes taught me how to wrestle. He taught me how to pay attention to my opponents, how to find my strengths inside my body. He taught me how to find my courage and how to show me how to handle my opponents, no matter what their size or what their powers of intimidation were. He taught me how to fight back with strength and with savvy. After Coach Fikes, I went on to find other coaches who taught me judo, taekwondo, aikido, karate, and thank God, rugby. When I was 13, my dad hit me for the last time. I had the strength, the courage, and attitude to make sure of it. My coaches taught me the lessons I needed to be taught to stand up for myself and my mom. Now, I want to say one quick thing about my dad. All that said, I know he loved me. And if he were here today, he'd be the first to say how proud he was of me. But there's other people in this room that have lived with the schizophrenia of someone that has an addiction or a mental health issue. And that's why we need to fund mental health facilities and addiction facilities heavily so that we can protect the families and protect the structure of our country. My coaches taught me a lot moral strength. They taught me how to win. They taught me about teamwork. They taught me how to never, ever walk away from a bully and to never, ever lose a fight to a bully. And I didn't. I spent 25 years fighting bullies, and then I got old. On November 10th, 2016, I found another bully, put a burr in my saddle. How do I go after him? How do I get close to him? How do I stop him? I said, House of Representatives. Just who is this Shimkus guy standing in my way? Right? And I started looking at Shimkus, and he's a bully too. He reminds me of my daddy. He's a bully to women. He's a bully to wounded warriors. He's a bully to children of poverty. He's a bully to people of color. He's a bully to the LGBTQ plus community. He's a bully to working people, to immigrants, and to farmers. Look at his record. Right? Look at his record. He can punch more people in the face with a single vote than everybody in this room combined could do in a lifetime. And he's doing it. So it's time to pull this team together. It's time to take the field. It's time that we take on the bullies.
I really appreciate your story, Carl. That is something else to go through, and the strength to be in this race and to fight somebody like John Shimkus is, it's tough. He's got over $1 million in his campaign fund, and this is something that no Democrat was willing to do in 2016. It's just people. Wherever I go, people go like, it's almost like this is a lost battle. The state party, the national party isn't going to probably give us a dime, and that's fine. I think money isn't going to win this race at all. What it is personal connections. It's actually knowing what the district needs, is what each one of these communities needs. And I've been doing this for a long time, fighting for other people, finding a problem and then doing something about it. It's just sometimes to my mom's chagrin and stuff. It's like I see a problem and I just do something. And sometimes I put myself in danger, but sometimes that's what is needed to be done. You know, standing up for others is a very, sometimes it's a difficult thing, but for me, it's like, yeah, you know, that's it, we have to do it. And there are so many people in this district that just can't stand up for themselves. I mean, number one, they're struggling to put food on the table. These families are struggling to get by. You know, in many cases, they don't have enough money to go get access to health care. And even if they did, where are they going to go? I mean, a lot of times they, you know, especially for Medicaid patients, you know, if you need a psychiatrist, you can't drive because you don't have a car to go to the psychiatrist, you know, 60, 90, 100 miles away. These systemic problems are the reason why I got in this race. I really got to say, we have to solve these problems. And Washington isn't going to do it alone, but having a voice there that actually cares, that's actually stood up for other people throughout their lives, and that it knows what it takes, which means you keep fighting, you keep standing up, even when you get knocked down. You know, I've been knocked down a lot throughout my life, but what I've also seen is when people lose that battle, when they actually are killed. And the thing is, those people deserve somebody to stand up for them, and we can't be everywhere all the time, but what we can do in a position like this is actually make a difference for people. And that's what they deserve. And I will do that as your congressman. And I will, you know, if being the nominee, I will stick it to John Shipkins the way he's been sticking it to this district for, you know, and he has been in there for 2 decades. That's 2 decades too long. You know, and let me tell you, we are going to take this battle to every single community, every single county, just like I've been doing for the last 6 months. And we are going to win this battle. Okay? Thank you.